Anyone want to go for a mountain bike ride? I sure do. I'm tired of looking at this Trance 29 in my garage. I'm ready to ride it. Today's my first day riding this bike. I like to take you along with me on my first ride on a new bike, so that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to hit the trails and I'll talk through what I think about this new bike. I officially have 10 minutes on this bike, and I've already stopped twice to make adjustments. Rule number one when riding a new bike, bring Allen wrenches. You'll make at least 3 adjustments on the ride. Even though it feels great in the garage, once you get on the trail, and I'm still not happy with it. So I'll probably stop and make some more adjustments. I've already adjusted the saddle height, saddle tilt, brake lever, and shifter positions. I don't like it. Got to do some more. Oh well, it's part of riding a new bike. Got to get it dialed in. So by the way, I'm shooting this video 4K, 30 frames a second. As you know, I'm trying to get my GoPro set up. Also running Pro Tune on the GoPro. Kind of get the video to my satisfaction. So you notice my riding up in North Georgia, if you didn't watch it in like 1080p, it was pixelated. You know, it looks fine on the computer, but there's something about, you know, when you upload it to YouTube and then watching it and not the full resolution, it just looks pixelated. So still trying to figure it out. So adjustments that I've made on this bike before I headed out is I took out 2 volume spacers out of the fork. I know from past experience I like a very linear fork. So this one actually had 3 volume spacers. I took out 2 of them. There's only 1 left. Haven't done anything to the shock other than just setting the sag, which I run about 25 to 30% sag in the rear shock. Good morning. I can tell you right off the bat, this bike is more nimble than the Stumpjumper 29, and I kind of expected it. This would be more comparable to the short travel Stumpjumpers, Stumpjumper 29, I should say. This thing corners so well. All right, I'm gonna get up to the top of a hill here, make some more adjustments, ride for a while, and then come back on and we'll talk about how the bike feels. All right, adjustment time again. All right, let's get this bike dialed and ride. This is a longish climb. For Florida, this is a long climb. And this bike, it has a really good pedaling platform. Obviously, it's got 25 mil less travel than my Trance had. Really good platform for pedaling. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the ride quality of this bike, and this by no means will be a complete review. Obviously this is my first time on the bike, so I'm just going to give my initial thoughts, because initial impressions can say a lot. So first of all, this bike feels extremely smooth and quiet, and I don't know if it's the tires, the geometry, everything. It just kind of all comes together. And I like the way these tires roll into a corner. They transition really smoothly. And also the geometry is just really dialed for a bike that's going to handle a little bit rougher terrain, but also agile. And it's kind of no surprise. This bike feels right in between my cross-country bike, which is currently a Niner RKT9 RDO, and the stump jumper. Does this bike feel like it has more than 115 millimeters of travel? I don't think so. Some people have said that, but personally I feel like it's spot on. It does not feel as plush as the stump jumper, which has 140. You know, this bike, like I said earlier, it's really agile. And I'm going to talk as I ride it more and compare it to the stump jumper what I feel about the fork offset. So this bike has a 44 millimeter fork offset, or fork rake, and the stump jumper has I think it's a 51. And so I'll do some comparisons about that, but so far I feel like this bike transitions from corner to corner very well, better than the longer travel stump jumper 29. The rear shock on this bike feels like it has a really nice progression. It definitely has a better pedaling platform than the Trance. The downside is it doesn't feel as plush. So I am going to open up the shock and see if I can pull out a volume spacer. I don't know if it has any. I would imagine it does, but that's going to be my next thing on this bike. I want a little bit more linear feel on the rear shock. I am getting almost full travel, but I just want the shock to not progress quite as well. That being said, I think a lot of people are going to like the progression of this shock. It just feels super smooth. I mean, kind of the theme of the bike so far is just flowy, smooth, quiet. The stump jumper I thought was the quietest bike I've ever ridden. Now this one is right up there. So who's this bike for? I know a lot of people had mentioned they're trying to decide between this and an Anthem. I think this bike is for the majority of riders, especially if you're only going to have one bike. If you don't need like an enduro race bike, or you know, a really long travel trail bike for super steep, fast, rough stuff, and you don't need a cross-country bike. So if you're a competitive cross-country racer, and if you're not sure if that's you, it's not. But if you're not a competitive cross-country racer, I think this is going to be the better bike. It's just going to be a more versatile bike. It's more comfortable. It's still plenty fast. It feels almost as fast as my cross-country bike. Now, you know, I mentioned this bike doesn't feel like it has more than 115 millimeters of travel. Part of that is because my Niner, which is 90 millimeters of travel, feels like it has more. That suspension is just super plush, and so this bike doesn't feel like it has a ton more suspension than my Niner, because the Niner has a 120 fork. This has a 130, so it's only 10 millimeters more. But it does feel like this bike is more capable when you start going fast. I'm really looking forward to taking this bike on more technical terrain, which I actually am going to do in a couple days. So this terrain is just fast and flowy. I've slowed it down to talk, but you can get going real fast on some of these trails. So, you know, like any 29er, the faster you go, the better it feels. I'm running 20 PSI in the front tire and 22 in the rear, and I actually feel like I can drop a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 at PSI, especially on these trails that aren't as rocky. So I'm going to try that also. So that's going to kind of wrap up my first impressions of this bike. like I said, it's just kind of a bike that's a great all-arounder. I'll be putting some more miles on this bike and do a follow-up video, and I'm going to do some head-to-head comparisons with the stump jumper. Not really to put Specialized against Giant, but more long travel 29 versus short travel 29. That stump jumper is only about a pound heavier than this bike, but it's got quite a bit more travel. So what'll be interesting is to see if Giant comes out with a longer travel version of the Trance. I think they will. I'm not sure if they'll call it a Trance, but I think they're testing the waters with this bike, and they've come out with a good one. I think a lot of people are gonna really enjoy this bike. You know, I felt comfortable on this bike right off the bat. So the stump jumper took me a while to get used to, whereas this one I felt comfortable right off the bat. And I think it's because it's a little bit closer to my cross-country 29er. So as always, questions or comments that you have about the bike, go ahead and drop those below. If any of you have had a chance to ride this bike, please let me know what you think about it, especially if you've compared it to, you know, a long travel 29 or even a cross-country bike. Love to know your thoughts. All right, y'all have a great day. Thanks for watching.